Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and I do apologise. I am a little bit under the weather, but we are powering on because we've got some important political news for you. Tonight, I am joined by the excellent Ben McLean. Ben, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I just got back into the studio because our software keeps kicking me. I'm doing good. I'm doing better than you at the moment. I'm so sorry that you're so ill and you're
Well,
having to do this.
given that you keep getting kicked out of the studio, I think I might be doing better than you.
Yeah. Okay. No. Fair enough. Yeah. In that sense, in the sense of like how smoothly the show's going to go,
Hmm.
you're probably going to have
It
an easier
it
time of
might
it than
be
me.
one of those, but we'll see. We'll see
Let's
how we're
see.
going to go. But this is what we've got coming up on tonight's show. We've got 4 stories once again. Labour are looking to reform inheritance tax. Anne Widdecombe thinks taxes is communism, as you do. US officials suggest Starmer would have surrendered to the Nazis, and Stella Creasy's disgraceful defence of Palestine Action Prescription. We're going to react to the video. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We'll be getting to your comments at the end, so please make sure you are busy in the chats. On to our first story. So, Labour will be looking to reform inheritance taxes. The Treasury is looking at ways to raise more money from inheritance tax amid growing pressure on the country's finances ahead of the autumn budget. Officials have been tasked with examining whether tightening rules on the gifting of money and assets could be one way of addressing a gap between revenue and spending that is estimated to reach more than £40 billion. Among the moves being considered are changes to how wealth or assets can be given away prior to death to reduce inheritance tax liabilities. This includes examining the possibility of a cap on lifetime gifting. At present, gifts made 7 years before someone dies are not subject to inheritance tax, while those given 3 to 7 years before death are taxed on a sliding scale known as taper relief, with the rate reducing each year from 32% to 8%. So it's not clear that specific reforms Labour will make on inheritance tax, or what specific reforms rather, and nothing so far has suggested that the taxes will increase. But these potential reforms have once again sparked the inheritance tax debate, with some people taking to Twitter calling the taxes evil. Inheritance tax is promoted only by evil covetous. I've not actually heard that word before. It's interesting. Clearly a public school boy. Nasty people who hates that people love their children. James Melville says, and he's the radical centrist of our time, inheritance tax is the most vindictive of all taxes, robbing the dead, punishing the bereaved, destroying a lifetime of family work, legacy, and assets. Notice he says assets there. The problem in this country is that we tax work more than we tax wealth. Inheritance tax affects a tiny amount of people in this country. Only those who are wealthy will face the tax. Yet it's not a popular policy. Ben, I want to get your response to Labour looking into inheritance tax reforms. I kind of want to hear your take on this sort of wider debate on inheritance tax and whether it's evil.
Yeah, of course it's evil. The communists are coming for your money, Curtis. Of course it's evil.
Oh no.
No, I do. Okay, so first of all, let's get the obvious out of the way. It is quite funny to laugh at people like Jamie Barnbrick, who apparently is like a Christian figure,
Yeah.
saying that this is a policy for people who hate people that love their children.
I went
It
on
is
his
quite
YouTube.
funny.
Did you see he's got like a YouTube channel, and it's like a definite right wing influencer. Oh, he has gone again. I knew this was going to happen. Basically, I researched this person who we're talking about, the first tweet, and he's got a YouTube channel, and he's like a pastor, but he inserts quite right wing stuff. One of his videos says, Jesus was not a socialist. He's back now. Go on, you
Yeah.
jump in.
Okay, before it kicks me again, the Christian YouTube channel that's like Jesus was a conservative, which is hilarious, and it is quite funny to laugh at these people. Let's not lie about it.
Yeah.
But it's also
Wow, he really is getting stung today. it's not like I can predict what he's going to say. To be fair, when he came in, he was here for a while. And then he went. I think when he comes back in, put it on just his screen. If we put it just on Ben's screen for now, and see what happens.
I think I'm just gonna like. I can't say on here because we'll get banned on YouTube what I'm gonna do. Okay. Yeah, so Christian, that's completely thrown me off. I'm so sorry. So each child can receive 325k completely tax free, right? So this isn't like, oh, it's going to leave you in the gutter and take away all your money. Like, that's not how inheritance tax works. I know I don't need to tell people this. But I also think, what about mothers like Alicia, who started going to a food bank in August 2023 to collect food for her children while she herself is starving? She told The Guardian last year it leaves her feeling worthless as a mother. Does she not love her children, Jamie? Like, why should we be punishing her? Why is there this double standard? Because if the rich don't pay tax, which they inherit, mothers like Alicia inevitably end up suffering. And again, we're talking about tax on assets worth over £325,000. Okay, so I don't know many places in the country where you can't buy a reasonable property for £325,000. Like, it's not going to get you the best properties, sure, but it's going to make sure that you are stable, and that's what your inheritance should do, right? We also know from leaked memos that Angela Rayner has suggested 8 wealth taxes. And I think this is all coming to an inevitable conclusion, right? Basically, the conclusion is that we can't afford the greed of the rich in this country. Or rather, we can't afford the greed of the rich to go completely untouched. So, my suggestion would be if we dislike inheritance tax so much, okay, but let's set up the incentives for avoiding it so that they benefit our society more widely. So, for example, you could have exemption for property given to children with no other homes or houses, or passed on to family members with no other homes or houses, thus incentivizing people to give their properties in particular to the even distant family members who don't have homes or houses, or even friends, of course, they can leave it to that don't have homes or houses. You could also put an exemption in place for the taxation if you sell it to the state to be used as council housing to diversify council housing stock. So, you instead of being taxed for going over the 325k limit, if you sell that to the state, you get the 400k or whatever it is, and then to give to your children, or if you're dead, your children take that, and then the government takes that house. They can then they buy that house off you, and then that house can be used as council housing stock, or maybe a partial exemption if you invest a percentage into shares of small or maybe medium local sized businesses, or community interest investments. There's ways around this that are much better. Like, the way the Labour government has handled it is very knee jerk, I think. It's much harder for Conservatives to argue against inheritance tax as a whole if the exemption.
We had him for quite a while there. I was actually want to respond to one of his points though, which is that, well, you can get a house for like 325,000, which is reasonable. I suppose in London you can't. So I think maybe actually you could potentially increase the tax percentage whilst year on year increase the threshold. Because obviously some house prices are disgraceful. I want to ask you something though, Ben.
Yes.
It's not a popular policy, right? It's not a popular. When it comes to economic issues, the left is usually quite in touch. Actually, people want to see increasing. Excuse me. People want to see higher taxes on the wealthy. People want to see a wealth tax, but it doesn't translate the same when it comes to inheritance tax, even though it's kind of a wealth tax in a way. But people don't want to support that, and I guess the logic here is when you describe taxing the rich and wealth taxes, it's only going to go to sort of the top 1%, whereas and it's seen as fair because a lot of people feel like he's got again. There's a lot of people who feel like the wealthy aren't paying their fair share. It's an easy policy to sell, but when it comes to inheritance tax, people think it's unfair because your parents worked hard. They bought a house, and now they're passing it on to their kids, and they feel like the state is stealing off them. Now, it doesn't mean I don't support inheritance tax. I do, but it's a much harder sell to people because people feel like it's kind of like theft from the government. So it's a much harder sell than it is to the public than it is like a wealth tax, for example.
Okay, I think I got most of that question before it kicked me. Yes, but this is. I think that one of the things is that any kind of tax can be described as theft if you believe that the tax is unjust. Whether or not you describe a tax as theft is almost entirely down to whether or not you think that it is a just use of it's being justly used and justly taken from you. I would also say that you could quite easily raise the threshold to 500,000, and I honestly think that might better reflect the economic environment we're living in, particularly with property prices. I think that might be a fair thing to do. But I also think that one of the ways you can tackle this, as I was saying before, is you make the exemptions incentivize people in progressive directions. You actually set up the exemptions so that when people get tax exemptions, they're doing it in progressive directions, investing in local governments, investing in local businesses, investing in council housing. You make it so that the policy moves in a progressive direction. The policy itself from the Labour government closing the tax loopholes is fine, but they could just be more active about it. It feels very knee jerk, and I think that that there's ways to get around it, ways to get around that unpopularity you're talking about that could be just more intelligently put to people. I'm amazed I haven't disappeared. I was expecting to disappear very quickly.
Yeah. It's throwing me off a little bit because I've got a couple of questions, and then when you leave, and it sort of it does throw me off. I do wonder though whether the decimation of the public realm has made people feel. I mean, look. We talk about individualism from Thatcher, right? It has made people more selfish in the sense that we care more about just our family and our immediate relatives, friends and family than sort of the wider society. In part, is because the public realm has been decimated. Do you think that lends credence to being against an inheritance tax because people feel like that the state isn't working for them, public services aren't working for them? We're paying our taxes and it's going on, let's be honest, private contracts. It's going on war. It's going on tax cuts for billionaires, but it's not fixing our potholes. It's not fixing our NHS. Therefore, people feel like, well, we have to sort of make our own way. The state isn't going to be there for us. And then anything we accrue over our lives in terms of assets, when it gets taken back off the state, I feel like personally, had people believed in the public realm or had a stronger belief in the public realm, people might be more open to things such as inheritance tax. But because that's been stripped away, it feels like, well, this is all we've got now, and now the state's coming for our stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the entire Conservative project since 1979 has basically been to underfund public services and then say, look, public services don't work, let's make them private. Right, that's step one. And step two is to reform our tax systems so that tax is as punitive as possible, so that people associate taxation with bad things, right? Your council tax bill, the council taxes were reformed in the 1980s in order to make them more punitive. This sort of like modern way of doing council taxes is designed in a very kind of American way to be as punitive as possible. It's like, this massive bill is coming out of your paycheck every month and going on bin services which are getting less and less frequent, or roads which are like kept more and more badly, in order to be able to like make it so that when you think tax, you think bad. I think that's, it's not an unconscious policy decision. It's something that's been very deliberate in neoliberal thinking, and has gone all the way through from Thatcher through each of her acolytes that we've had to deal with for the past 30 years. And I think it's fair to say that all of them have been acolytes of Thatcher. Like, I can't really think of an exception. Maybe Boris Johnson? possibly.
No, I no, because Boris Johnson, in a weird way, was more open to public investment. In fact, you had the 2019
Exactly, yeah.
manifesto.
That's what I mean.
Both manifestos we're talking about uplifting social security, which is wow, it shows how far we've come. You're absolutely right, though, but we are going to move on to our next story because we've got another 3 to get through. Now, a debate between Zach Polanski and Anne Widdecombe on Jeremy Vine has made the rounds, as Anne Widdecombe seems to claim that wealth taxes equals communism.
All the people you describe, that as far as you're concerned, if you've got that money, that value in an asset, you shouldn't be able to pass it on to your children. That should go into the public pot and be used for public services.
Well, that's a question about taxation reform.
No, it's a direct question.
And I largely agree, but things like bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax, right now, a whole kind of tax system is weighed unfairly so that it's hitting poorer people hardest. What I'm really suggesting is that those with the broadest shoulders need to carry the biggest
You've got to give it to him, Anne. That is an ideological point of view. It's a very clear, you might say, red water between the Green Party, who are the party of the left now, and the Labour Party.
If you look at countries who have practiced communism, which is pretty well what that is, if you look at countries which have practiced trying to level, not opportunity, but trying to level actual holding of wealth, they haven't really done so well.
Well, I think that's untrue. If you look at somewhere like Switzerland, that has a wealth tax, and actually they seem to be doing pretty well. There's lots of other countries around the world that have looked at wealth taxes. And fundamentally, I think most people agree that when people are really, really struggling, those with inordinate amounts of wealth, I'm not talking about small shop owners, I'm not talking about small business holders.
But you are when it comes to inheritance tax.
You are when it comes to more money while asleep than any of us could earn in the life.
You are talking about those people.
I mean, everything is communism these days. Obviously, a completely moronic thing to say. And this is a talking point from the right wing. You know, that leftists want to make everyone equally poor. And since everyone's equal, mission accomplished. Many nations that have had higher taxes and better public investment have led to millions escaping poverty. Our own country, during the 60s, had a marginal tax rate of 90%. Yet we're not even talking about income tax. It's wealth taxes. Those who earn off assets, who generate passive income, that's not even taxed. It's an utterly ridiculous argument. And also that bit at the end where he said, look, I'm talking about the super rich. And Anna Widdecombe saying, well, no, eventually you're going to hit the small businesses. Why is that? In fact, small businesses are struggling and medium-sized businesses are struggling because there's a lack of competition and everything is being bought up. Everything is being monopolised. I mean, I hear about pubs, right? We're hearing that the pub is going down the drain, which, I don't know. I don't see it, but obviously I definitely hear when pub landlords are saying they're struggling, right? And a lot of them turn around and say, yeah, the taxes on us, it's ridiculous. As if that's the main issue. The main issue is the fact that we've got big sort of brewers who are monopolising everything. And when you have a market that's completely monopolised, you get priced out. So in fact, you want to increase taxes. You want wealth taxes on the very richest, so to reduce their power. That's the entire point of it. As Ben was saying earlier, taxes are really incentive structure. You want to incentivize good things, so you want to cut taxes for electric vehicles, shall we say, and you want to increase taxes on fossil fuel companies. I mean, you want to increase tax on companies anyway, but it's all about an incentive structure. Ben, I want to get your response to Anne. I mean, apparently taxes equate to communism, and it's not a stateless, classless, moneyless society.
Yeah, so it's the classic sort of communism is when the government does stuff argument. I think when it comes to her argument, like, obviously that's not what communism is. I would say that taxes are like applied so that society can function. And it's always worth bearing in mind that the wealthy would not have their wealth without taxation. Like, there's no scenario in which the wealthy are able to gather the wealth that they get without taxation being somewhere in that cycle. Like, taxation will train their workforce, it'll keep their workforce healthy, it will stabilize the currency that they use and provide security, both in terms of like fire services, you know, to protect their assets, and also security in terms of stopping people just stealing stuff from their assets in terms of policing. Like the state and the things which the state spends on in a capitalist society are designed to protect capitalist assets. It's it's not a difficult calculation. In fact, if you look at Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal. The economist Richard Wolff often tells this story of Franklin D. Roosevelt taking the business leaders at the time into a room and saying, "Look, if you don't accept higher taxes, if we don't have a new deal for this country, if we don't start providing for the working class of this country, then Soviet style communism is coming here." Because you won't be able to carry on like this. You won't be able to carry on treating people like this because your businesses are going to start collapsing if your workers can't afford to feed themselves because you refuse to pay your taxes and you refuse to be taxed at a decent rate. If we've got poor public services, poor transportation, your workers are going to stop spending in the economy. And when they stop spending in the economy, that is when you are truly fucked because your businesses will start to collapse. And we see this in the UK, like businesses collapse in the high street all the time because no one can afford to spend in those businesses. It's worth just for a bit of trivia. Karl Marx did actually argue against the idea that workers should receive the entire value of their labor in Critique of the Gotha program, because some would inevitably have to go to social programs like social housing, disability care, all of the things that are necessary for like a society to function. And like if Karl Marx did recognize this, but it shows that there were competing ideas of socialism and communism that had different ideas around it. Like taxation isn't inherently communist; it's not inherently capitalist. It depends on the society that you live in. But one of the great things about taxation and progressive taxation is it applies what's called the difference principle. The idea that inequalities within society should benefit the least advantaged the most, and the most advantaged the least. And the people who are suffering inheritance tax, who are getting taxed inheritance tax, are, because they own assets over 325,000, are the most advantaged. So they should get the least advantage from our system. They should be taxed the most.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's impossible for a worker to receive 100% of their value because part of that surplus value has to go back into the business anyway. And I think most Marxists understand that. I also think, I mean, I very much agree that whether you want to call it like a workers' tax, right, that should be reinvested into the state to pay for social programs. That is what distinguishes, I would say, socialism to communism, whereas communism is the state withering away, which is, once again, it's ironic when you've got right-wingers who say that taxes are communism. But actually, if you think about it, there are no taxes under communism, kind of. Not at a state level, anyway. If you were to take the sort of analysis of communism that I take, which is a stateless, moneyless class of society, you wouldn't really have sort of national taxes, which is quite ironic. And also, taxes predates capitalism. It's existed for a long, long time. It's how you leverage it, but it's incredible. What you were saying actually as well about people and businesses need more money to participate in the economy in a more meaningful way. Anne Widdecombe, I mean, it's not in this clip, but it's in the same interview or debate. She says that, right? But she says, and that's why taxes need to come down. And I hear this from right-wingers. And as I was just saying about the pub landlord analogy, right? Right-wingers are annoyed about the cost of living, right? They recognise, as much as to the left, that things are too expensive. But then they think that taxes are the one that we should target, right? The thing is, though, most people, I think it's most people anyway, pay 20% in taxes, okay? 20%, I don't think is that much, right? Compared to social democratic countries in Europe, it's very low. I mean, what they're getting for their increased taxes is far better, by the way. But it's not very high. Now, if reform were to get in and say, right, we're going to cut taxes for the lowest people, like increase the threshold, or those on 20% will go down to 15%. First of all, think of the trade-off. I mean, what's going to get cut in terms of public services? A lot, and they will have their excuses to do it. But 5% of your wage isn't really that much in the grand scheme of things. Whereas people are paying most of their wages on rents, mortgages, their bills. So I'm really annoyed, and I kind of don't really understand it when right-wingers are so obsessed about taxation, when that won't make a difference. But the cost of living, the cost of, I mean, mortgages have obviously skyrocketed under the Conservative government. Rent has always been really, really high. If you want to tackle costs, you need to tackle those things. Taxes won't make any difference. In fact, taxes are such a bang for your buck. The fact that we're paying 20%, even for some people 30, 40%, and what you're getting in return, even with an austerity-ridden Britain, it's quite impressive. I mean, it's the public versus private tax. You have a public tax where it goes through the states, you get your public services back. America, they tax people on healthcare, but it's a private tax. It's not done through the state. It's not administered through the state. It's administered through insurance companies. But what you pay for your base level insurance plus premiums is so expensive. And actually, sort of national healthcare and public services are insurance programs. It's just that more people buy into the system, and it's just mandated. It's actually, ironically, when we talk about like sort of the UK health insurance system and the American health insurance system as if the two different systems, they're actually kind of the same, right? We're just the sort of logical endpoint of health insurance, because the idea of health insurance is to get as many people covered as possible, which makes it cheaper for everyone. And we just go that step further and say, okay, we're going to cover as many people as possible by doing it through the state, and we're just going to automatically collect your insurance premiums through taxes. It's very simple. It makes it better for everyone.
Yeah, we save so much through primary care, particularly because we treat people early. People don't feel that they have to pay to go to the doctor.
Well, that's why the NHS, in terms of UK healthcare, sorry to cut you off, it's cheaper per capita. I think the US pays double the amount of. I think the US pays twice the amount on healthcare per capita than the UK, and yet we're told by right wingers, Reem Ibrahim from the IEA, that actually national programs are really bloated and bureaucratic.
Yeah, like I think that is the perfect comparison with what Anne Widdecombe's trying to sell you. It's this idea people wouldn't have more money in their pocket necessarily if you cut taxes. That's not a good calculation to make because, like you say, in the US they don't have any spending on or they do spend inevitably subsidizing healthcare, but they don't have tax supported healthcare for like we do here, in terms of the NHS, and they end up shelling out more, and it's kind of the same in our situation. Like if we pay a little bit more, but we nationalize water, energy, rail, mail, like all of those things, we'll probably end up shelling out less in the end, but we're blind to that fact. And reform, I don't think are blind to that fact. I think a lot of them don't want to promote anything which might upset their billionaire donors. Like I think that's pretty much where it comes from. And also, let's not forget the pensioners that support reform who don't want any form of like taxation on assets which they potentially want to pass to their children, which is an understandable point of view. But also, if you're that worried, you can gift it. You can make that gift as soon as you can. But also, if they're closing this loophole, then I think they should open up another loophole, which is progressively incentivized. I really like the idea of letting houses be bought by the state and become council houses, because then you diversify the council housing stock, and council houses will start to lose this sort of bad reputation of being, somewhere that's like run down and poorly looked after. If we actually invest in council housing and buying back some council housing, that's superb. That's the kind of thing we want.
God, I'm fighting the urge to call that communism. It's so easy.
Yes.
Okay, it's 8:05. We're going to move on to our next story. US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee suggested that Starmer would have surrendered to the Nazis. The US Ambassador to Israel on Friday launched a furious attack on UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying that Britain would have lost World War II to Nazi Germany under his leadership. Starmer is among several world leaders to oppose Israel's plan to wrest control of Gaza City, and Ambassador Mike Huckabee expressed his disagreement in trenchant terms. So Israel is expected to surrender to Hamas and feed them, even though Israeli hostages are being starved, Huckabee wrote on social media. Did UK surrender to Nazis and drop food to them? If you had been PM, then UK would be speaking German. I'm sorry, but I do think that is a suggestion. Not that Starmer would lose to the Nazis, but would bow to them. That is what Huckabee, I think, is claiming there. Just because Labour want to put some restrictions on Israel, which is ironic since Huckabee, the US, and most of the West are providing cover to the real modern Nazis, Israel. But this is Keir Starmer we're talking about, right? He hasn't been some sort of strong supporter of Palestine. The Labour government has happily supported Israel in everything they've done, yet because Starmer put a condition on Israel, which is that the UK will recognise Palestine as a state to try and bring Israel around a table, an incredibly weak proposition, I may add, that makes him not only Hamas, but a man who would fold to the Nazis. Now, this is obviously deranged. But it's not surprising hearing this from Mike Huckabee. He's insane. In fact, he went on Piers Morgan recently and proudly admitted he spends more time in Israel than with his wife.
I think it's ludicrous. I've been with the Prime Minister almost as much as I have been with my own wife since I have arrived here as ambassador.
And I'm sure she's very relieved, by the way. I wonder if the US administration feels the same. I mean, I bet all of those in the US administration would rather spend more time with Netanyahu than their wives. Ben, we have long followed the genocide in Palestine, and during that time, we haven't held back our criticisms of Labour. But to say Labour would have bowed to the Nazis in World War II, that is absurd.
I actually think Mike Huckabee's right.
Wow.
But not in the way that he thinks he is, right?
Do tell.
I think Starmer would have done deals with the Nazis. He would have imitated their policy style because that's how he thinks that you combat right-wing administrations, right? That's how he thinks that you do it. And if you've got a belligerent force threatening to take over their neighbours for a far-right, literal Nazi-saluting, uniform-wearing country that is spending lots on their military and threatening to take over their neighbours, well, you roll out the red carpet for them. You give them a state visit. Let's not forget the Trump cult here in terms of appeasing the far right. Or worse, he might have been using British planes and the RAF to help them gather intelligence against partisans in the East and talking about the Soviet threat. I really don't know. I just can't underestimate the moral vacuousness of Keir Starmer. I really cannot.
Well, you're drawing parallels to Keir Starmer today, right? And I feel like you've been a little bit facetious here. But I think because there's people in chat I agree with Ben. I think he's right. I mean, I don't think he would have because remember, right? Keir Starmer follows the state, the power of the state, right? The power of the Western powers, and obviously he would have sided with. He would have sided with. I mean, he wouldn't have sided with the Germany of the Soviets, right?
Are you sure?
I mean. I'm really interested. I can't tell if you're slightly joking. Would you genuinely be concerned?
A bit, but I'm a bit joking. But I could see him more aligning himself with Mussolini. Soft fascism. But
in terms of really Mike Huckabee saying, "Oh, we'd be speaking German," right? The sense here is that Starmer would have just completely folded and just let the Nazis do whatever they want. I don't know if that would be the case, because he's not going against the grain, right? It's not when it comes to Israel, right, the entire West is backing Israel. Of course he's not going to do anything about it because he's a sycophant, right? He sucks up to power. Obviously, it's a little bit different in World War II. I don't know. I don't think he would have been as staunch as Churchill, because Churchill's a Tory. He has a lot of disgusting opinions. But Churchill certainly wanted to win that war. He absolutely wanted to win the war and he was going to back down. That's not. I can't see that in Keir Starmer. But
Yeah,
I don't think I could accept Mike
Starmer-
Huckabee saying, "Well, we'd be speaking German now," because he would have completely faulted the Nazis. I just can't see that.
So Starmer is closer to Neville Chamberlain than he is to Winston Churchill. And by the way, Chamberlain has a bad reputation. Chamberlain actually did quite a lot to build up, say, the RAF before the onset of World War II. He did see what was on the cards. Like, he wasn't as like passive as the historical narrative might have you believe, largely because of a lot of that historical narrative is taken from Winston Churchill's diaries, right? So that's a historical pet peeve of mine. When it comes to like comparisons between Starmer and Churchill and Starmer and Neville Chamberlain, you've got to also remember that when Hitler found out that Britain had declared war over Poland, he was inconsolable for like his advisors were like, we can't talk to him in this state. He really thought that Britain was going to back him, and I think that's always worth bearing in mind. I'm not saying that like with everything as it would have been, would Starmer as prime minister have? It's like, okay, that would have changed the dynamics between Britain and Germany quite a bit as well. So there's like a deeper thing than just, oh, we'll just go with whatever Germany wants. But unfortunately, Starmer has set himself up in terms of being the person who just goes, oh, the right wing are doing this. Well, we'll do that, but just a little bit softer. And you don't have the perspective that we have. In retrospect, we can look back and go, oh yeah, fascism, Nazis, obviously bad. But at the time, of course, people don't have that perspective. People can't see it in the meta. You know, they don't get that view. But I think a couple of things I was going to say is that so it does show the absurdity of Israel's only defense line, which is call everyone Nazis without any self-awareness. The fact that they're doing a genocide doesn't even seem to like factor into the calculation in the mind of Israel and Israel's defenders. But also, Mike Huckabee says this line about how he spends more time in Israel or more time with Benjamin Netanyahu than with his wife. Well, if his taste in morality is anything like his family values, then that's a tragedy for everybody but his wife and her boyfriend, who are probably enjoying the peace and quiet.
That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of them will be happy they're spending more time with Netanyahu than their wives. I don't know if I'm completely on board with whether Starmer would or not, but I am open to have my mind changed. What I do want to talk about, though, is because obviously what Mike Huckabee is saying is for very different reasons. He's not saying that, Keir Starmer's a soft touch on fascism, which is what he is. He's saying that, well, because Hamas are the Nazis and because he gives the slightest amount of pushback to Israel, then he will be on the side of that. That, to me, I think we can agree is utterly insane.
Yes, yeah. Oh, obviously. Like the constant comparison between Hamas and the Nazis, because Hamas is anti-Semitic. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of anti-Semitism in Hamas. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. But like drawing that comparison, I mean, yeah, the British in World War II were pretty anti-Semitic as well. That doesn't make the comparison a good one. Yeah, and you've also got to bear in mind Hamas has no formalized military. The
Oh, we were going so good. I reckon it's probably because the Online Safety Act heard Ben go after Starmer and say he could be a soft touch on the Nazis, and they got rid of him. I want people to put comments in the chat actually, and say I predict where it's going to go. Put comments in the chat and say whether people agree more with Ben or more with me. Having said that, though, Ben's more of an expert on this, and you studied this, so I'm not coming in the way of you're wrong. But I'm also willing to have my mind changed. But having said that, as we stand, I do want people to comment in the chat and be like, oh, I think Ben's more right. I think maybe Curtis is more right.
Just see what goes down.
Finish your point though, because you are back in, and hopefully we'll
yes.
Stay.
Remind me. Wait, what did we just say?
We got to basically Hamas don't have an official military.
Oh yes, yeah. So they've got the Al Qassam brigades, but the Al Qassam brigades are not a formal military. They don't have drones. They don't have like a formalized military intelligence structure. And so, comparisons between the largest and most powerful army of the 1930s up until America get involved in the 1940s, and with some of the most advanced military equipment of its time, comparisons between that and a whatever you think of them, a guerrilla fighting force in Palestine, a relatively small one, just that they come off as ridiculous. They come off as though they don't quite make sense to anybody who knows anything about either conflict.
I mean, looking at the comments, it looks like a shutout. I don't think a single person has sided more with me, which is very interesting. But I like
hate
this.
On Keir Starmer, you can't go wrong. Okay, everybody agrees with you when you hate.
I mean,
Keir Starmer.
I think it was probably too much to ask our audience, because everyone here at Turn Left and our viewership hates Keir Starmer, right? So
exactly,
I was never going to win that one. Not that I'm defending Starmer or anything, because that. If I were, I'd have to wash my mouth out with soap. Okay. Before we move on to our next story, I just want to say that we are all volunteers. As you say, we're working on a shoestring match, rather a zero budget. See, I mean, our guest keeps cutting out. We are a group of volunteers. There are 5 of us, and we are doing this around our full-time jobs. We go to work, then we come home, then we put a show together for you. You guys have been incredible so far, I do want to say. I love seeing the same people in the comments. We've built up a really good community, and the money you've given so far has made a difference. We've gone to rallies, we've done interviews in person, we've bought ourselves equipment, traveling, of course, you know how expensive trains are. All that has made a difference. So I want to thank everyone who's contributed so far. And if you do want to contribute further, you can go to our website, which is turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us via Patreon, which is a monthly service, or there is a link to a one-off donation. Alternatively, you can also support us by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. But please just like the stream. If you're not subscribed, you should be. But if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. But I want to thank everyone. But let's go on to our next story. Stella Creasy went on Instagram and tried to defend the prescription of Palestine action whilst pretending to be concerned about wanting to defend protest.
It is a mess. Nobody who saw the scenes at this weekend, where lots and lots of people were arrested protesting, can think that this is the best of British democracy. And it is absolutely critical that we get right what we do about the fact that violence against individuals and intimidation is increasingly being normalised as part of political campaigning. Observation number 1. Yeah, you're right. Those of us who voted for prescription need to be clearer about the basis for that. Now, that is more complicated than it should be, because the evidence presented to us about the use of violence against individuals is part and parcel of court cases, and so couldn't be part of the parliamentary debate. But I will share with this video a number of links to the reports about those examples and the repeated targeting of individuals for intimidation and violence, and also the High Court documents that show that the initial request by the security services and the police for prescription, because that threshold of direct violence had been met, was made in March this year. Now, that is before the attack on Brize Norton. So the call for prescription predates whatever happened at Brize Norton, and it centres on those violent acts. It is a mess. Nobody who saw the scenes at this weekend, when lots and lots of people were arrested protesting, can think that this is the best of British democracy. And it is absolutely critical that we get right what we do about the fact that violence against individuals and intimidation is increasingly being normalised as part of political campaigning. Observation number 1. Yeah, you're right. Those of us who voted for prescription need to be clearer about the basis for that. Now, that is more complicated than it should be, because the evidence presented to us about the use of violence against individuals is part and parcel of court cases, and so couldn't be part of the parliamentary debate. But I will share with this video a number of links to the reports about those examples and the repeated targeting of individuals for intimidation and violence, and also the High Court documents that show that the initial request by the security services and the police for prescription, because that threshold of direct violence had been met, was made in March this year.
I mean, what I think Creasy is doing is misinforming people, right? We covered it on one of our previous shows, but if you didn't see it, we talked about leaked documents obtained by Declassified UK. In those documents, it showed intelligence officials clearly stating that Palestine action posed no threat to national security and they were not a violent threat to people. Yet Creasy is talking about the difference between violent acts and direct action. Palestine action has never committed violent acts, but they have committed criminal damage, which we already have laws in place that deals with it. But due to the prescription, we have, I don't know, literally old grannies being arrested for holding up placards. Her concerned trolling does absolutely nothing, especially when she voted to prescribe Palestine action. I mean, what exactly did she expect would happen? And her saying, oh, well, it's a mess. Well, maybe you shouldn't have voted for it if you needed more clarification. Even if you wanted to prescribe them, but now you're like, oh, actually, this is a bit complicated. Then why did you vote for it? Did you not have more questions to ask? The doubling down from Labour, arresting people on streets for holding signs and lying to the people about how violent PA actually are, is disgusting. I'm trying to be really angry about this whilst still being a little bit sick. It's quite difficult, but I'm so pissed off it's coming through anyway. It's so much so, actually, that even real-life Alan Partridge, Richard Madeley, brought up some good points when interviewing Labour victim minister Alex Davies-Jones.
Has the government got a bit of a tiger by the tail here in prescribing Palestine action when you see that kind of protest by that kind of person?
We don't support terrorists in the United Kingdom, Richard. Would you be asking me that if this was about the IRA or Hamas? Palestine Action are a prescribed terrorist organisation.
Well, you make a comparison with the IRA and with Hamas. Of course, you could say the difference here is that the IRA planted multiple bombs. They operated with snipers. They were a very deadly force in these islands. And Hamas, of course, is responsible for what happened on October the 7th, which was a pogrom. I guess what I'm suggesting to you, and I'm not implying an opinion myself, is that Palestine action, whereas it may have done, as you say, some collateral damage to machinery by spraying it with paint, isn't quite in the same league.
That's violent criminal damage to RAF aircraft, of which is a national security measure. These are a prescribed terrorist organisation, Richard, and we do not support terrorists in this country.
Oh, why would someone think of the RAF parts? Oh no. I mean, look, Richard makes the salient point that the IRA and Hamas have killed people, right? Spray painting planes is not violent. Yeah, I mean, look at her facial expression, right, when she's giving the answer. Like the anger and vitriol when she says it. You know, it's those planes and equipment that is helping Israel commit terrorism abroad. They're facilitating a literal genocide. I have such a strong sense of repulsion against this government. Not dislike, not disagreement, but hatred. Right? Scumbags who have blood on their hands gaslighting us, telling us that we're wrong. Ben, before we talk about Labour's overall response to the media over arrests, what's your take on Stella Creasy's defence of the prescription?
Yeah, I did just want to talk about that for just a second.
Please do.
That interview footage from Richard Madeley at the end there, because it occurs to me that it's a very circular logic to go, why is Palestine Action a prescribed terrorist organisation? Well, it's because they're a because in this country we don't support terrorist organisations, and then why don't we support this organisation? Well, because they're a prescribed terrorist organisation. There's a very kind of circular line of logic going round and round and round there without a proper answer. And so someone has clearly told Stella Creasy, okay, go out and make it look like you've put out an answer. Then people who haven't watched the video will think, oh, so you do have an explanation. It's just, you've put that online. Cool, you put out some kind of answer. So what were the things that were good about what Stella Creasy was doing there? One, her lighting's not bad, right? She's using a ring light. You can see it's reflected in the, and she's also using a teleprompter, because if you listen to the way that she says certain words, it's clear that she like getting to the end of a sentence and then going, oh, and then realizing she's got to finish the end of that sentence. I like that from politicians. We need more of that, please. We need
on
more,
on the left, you mean,
more
though?
stuff like that. Yeah, but we'd prefer it from politicians who are on the actual left.
Yeah, I mean, we want more politicians on the left who aren't,
I
supporting
agree.
genocide. That would be that would be quite nice.
That's obviously the priority. But I said I said I was going to be kind and do the here's the positive things about the video. The negative things about the video, it can be debunked in a single sentence, right? We can't tell you why. Okay, don't prescribe them until you can then. That's it. That's where the conversation should end. Like, you can't prescribe an organization and then tell people, oh, well, we can't tell you why we prescribe an organization. And this isn't me supporting that organization, by the way, just being very clear about that. But Stella Creasy posted links underneath that video, which you...
And I reckon that's Stella Creasy going on in there. What I wanted to say, right, is that it's not just them saying, well, we're prescribing this organization. We can't tell you why we're prescribing this organization. It's also, I think, lying to the public, because they're saying, well, we actually have information to say that they're violent. In fact, Yvette Cooper said, not all is of it seems when it comes to Palestine action. But once again, we have leaked documents that literally show officials say they pose no threat to national security and they're not violent. And yet there's nothing within these leaked documents that suggest why they were prescribed. In fact, Stella Creasy admits, and obviously we got it for the leaked documents anyway, but Stella Creasy admits that this wasn't based on the spray painting of the RAF. In fact, it was as early as March. In fact, it was as early as 2024. But even if we say it's as early as March, that just goes to show that they were going to prescribe them for a long, long time. And what grounds was it? I mean, they can't say because they broke into the RAF base, because that was obviously afterwards. Even though, to me, that's not enough to be prescribed. But they can't even use that as an excuse.
So, yeah, she posted that video, and she said, we're following the trail of evidence here. So they've put Stella Creasy's video up and said, okay, the evidence is hidden in Stella Creasy's video. You go to the video, and Stella Creasy said, oh, I put evidence in the description. You go to the description, and in the description, she's posted like a bunch of links, right? But it's Instagram. You can't click on the links, and you can't copy the links to put it in another browser unless you open it in on a computer browser. And most people are going to be seeing this on their phones, right? And she said, when somebody pointed this out to her in the comments, you can look underneath. It says apologies, as in apologies, and it says that she was working on it, but that was like a day ago. She hasn't posted it to her Twitter like people were suggesting. It's again this thing of like, oh, the evidence is just there, but we can't show you it. So from what I was able to discern from the evidence that was posted underneath from those links, basically it comes down to there was one incident of the use of a sledgehammer to cause criminal damage, and saying that people were carrying it as a weapon. So that's, maybe two counts, criminal damage, but also it's a weapon that could be used. Okay. And another case of fireworks or pyrotechnics being used against security workers. Right. I don't condone these. These are criminal acts, but they don't constitute terror offences. They don't constitute enough to get somebody prescribed, in my opinion. I don't know how people feel about that more generally.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think there is a clause in the Terrorism Act where it does say that you don't have to necessarily commit violence against peoples. You can commit violence against equipment and stuff. And technically, you could prescribe Palestine action because it meets the threshold. But I watched a fantastic interview, and actually it was an advisor to like one of the royals, actually former advisor to the royals, and he gave an excellent answer when he was posed that question. He said, look, if you look at the Terrorist Act, I think it's like TA 2000, one little clause in it which says actually you don't have to necessarily commit violence against people, then Palestine action could meet that threshold. He goes, yeah, and the Terrorism Act is 2000, the year 2000. It's now 2025. This is the first group that has been prescribed under the Terrorism Act that hasn't committed violent acts against people. So yes, there may be a slight clause in there, but it's funny. In 25 years, there's been one group that's been prescribed under it, because no sensible person would actually prescribe it. One group in 25 years, and it's funny. It's funny how it's against Israel and the ongoing genocide, and it goes against Western foreign policy, as if this isn't politically motivated.
This is true, and typically in IR, in international relations, terrorism is usually defined as offences and violent offences committed against civilians and civilian populations in order to influence political outcomes, and it has to be done specifically by non-state actors, which in this case, like Palestine Action, wouldn't come close to meeting that definition. Like, they don't commit violent acts against civilians at the very least. Military equipment is one thing, but civilians, that's not meeting the definition here. Again, not defending Palestine Action, not saying that they're not saying that I support them. I'm saying that it doesn't meet the definition, the typically used definition of terrorism, because almost every other group that you can name under terrorism that's prescribed under terrorism legislation meets that definition. They meet the definition. They commit violent acts against civilians in order to influence a political outcome, and they are non-state actors.
I very much agree. I say we're going to go to our producer for your comments. I've seen a couple of bangers actually in the chat. I'm excited to get to.
Yeah, that happens. Some funny ones. Hello, really great show. You guys doing so well. Let me go to the super chats. This one is funny. Sorry. Ooh. Awesome said, my mate told me Sir Keir Starmer has an antique pair of Mrs. Thatcher's knickers, which he sniffs before bed. Keep up the amazing work. So jokes.
I have to admit, I hearted that one.
Did you? I was like, oh, I thought it was me, and I was like, oh, did I do this so quickly?
Hey, want to fight about it? Hey. Thank you. Great insight. I mean, who's your mate? I want to know more about
Trust me.
Starmer.
And then thank you, Carl, for gifting 10 membership. And then Tic Tac. Big love, turn left. Check out my new single, Tic Tac Nightfall, available now. The song is for Palestine. So
nice. Available now. Go on YouTube. I assume you type in Tic Tac Nightfall in the search bar. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'd assume so. So yeah, I'm going to check that out after the show. Super excited. And let's go to the start. We'll go from really quickly. Hey, Kirsten Cog, congratulations standing up for migrants on GB News. Cog, amazing. It's hard to not call you Cog. I'm struggling with that, but I'll get there.
Wait, you mean it's hard to, yeah. I find myself accidentally saying Cog as well.
Cog, yeah. I'm like, who's Ben? He's an imposter.
Either or.
Yeah. And then I hope I'm saying this correctly, but Graham, Curtis, come on. Covetous isn't a fancy word.
It is a fancy word because I've never heard of it. So I'm just going to say it is.
Coveting your neighbour's ox. No?
Is it covetous?
Biblical.
Covetous.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? I don't know.
Jealous, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's like, when you... Basically,
when you're generous, jealousy.
When you yearn for something, when you have like a massive yearn for.
Just
something.
say jealousy on Twitter though. Why do people? I just want to show off your literature privileged.
Literature privilege. But yeah, lots of things about Ben. Who is this Ben character? And what they're doing? Cog, and then first Sarah and now Coggy getting kicked. Yep. Someone saying that we need to get Cog a new computer. Absolutely.
So I'm plugged into the Ethernet. My computer's fine. It functions for GB News.
Have you checked your? I mean, to be fair, GB News uses Zoom, don't they? But have you done the upload speed though? Because I think upload speed matters. Because when we, what is it?
I think it's a I think it's a software.
Exactly what it is, but it was fine.
It's definitely the software.
I do want to say though, it doesn't ever happen to me. I'm not, it's not a dig.
It's because you're our founding leader. That's why. I'm joking. Sorry.
Thanks. Great insight there.
Well, we had a problem with this software before, and we found out that it was like because several of us were with Sky for our internet provider, and Sky had put something on that was blocking us from getting to it. So it's so difficult to predict what it is.
We can open
like,
up another ticket with them. But this is what's really frustrating about this software is it's buggy, but it does everything we need right now.
Yeah.
Look at the screen you're looking at now. You've got three of us. You've got us two, our feeds. Got produced in the background. We've got the comment section. We've got the scrolling bar. We've got different scenes split. All these things, and it's quite a professional setup for what you're paying actually. But it's buggy as fuck, and there is no alternative at the moment, because obviously we do this remotely. We don't have the capacity to have a industry standards software that's in one studio every single time with one producer. So you kind of need to still have it within the browser, and this is kind of the best we can get. But it's so buggy. I mean, I obviously I'll flag it up with them, but it is pretty annoying because Ben, you're fucking on fire. Right,
Yeah.
you're cooking, and then you get cut out,
disappear. Yeah,
and then you got me going,
terrible.
right, shit, I better say something.
Yes,
Especially with me being a little bit under the weather. I'm like,
No,
I ain't got the
both
brain
done.
capacity to do what Cog's doing.
You've done
just Ben's
exceptionally.
doing.
Both of you have
But
done
yeah,
so
you've done,
exceptionally.
you really well, Curtis. Sarah's right.
Curtis is
Badass.
badass.
Zeke, you're a fucking badass. I mean, you're that beast at the end of the day. It's in your fucking name.
But let's get into some comments. So Jay said, inheritance tax is just papers over the cracks. The rich use to blood, sweat and tears of the working class to amass their wealth. And I think that's kind of what you guys were saying.
I think I do actually tend to agree. I do think that a proper wealth tax is needed. And you could say it's a form of wealth tax, but I think it doesn't go after the super rich. I mean, there's too many loopholes anyway. For me, I would stand on the streets and protest for a wealth tax, but I wouldn't stand on the streets and protest just for an inheritance tax increase. I support it, but I think I agree with Jay. It's kind of papers over the cracks. Was really, and it was actually interesting when Stephen Meffon came on last week, and we were talking about what sort of tax rises are the Labour Party going to bring in, and he said, I could see them bringing actually in sort of another bracket where they'll slightly raise income taxes on richer people. But it's not precedent within the Labour Party ever to have a wealth tax, because that really meaningfully redistributes wealth. And you'll never see that from Rachel Reeves. And I think that's why wealth taxes are so scary. I actually think the richest in society aren't as scared of raising income taxes than wealth taxes, because especially the passive income you get off wealth taxes, to literally sit on your ass and watch assets generate money, then people are going to be like, well, you can increase my income taxes until it's nothing left, because I'm just going to put everything in assets anyway. I think actually increasing income taxes is kind of a red herring. And a lot of people, even on this channel, say I favour increasing income taxes rather than wealth taxes. I've seen people say that, but I think the reverse is the better option.
Financial transaction taxes are a good idea, to be fair, and
Yeah.
there've been people advocating for financial transaction taxes for the past 10-15 years, and they work really well, because every time a rich person makes a transaction in the stock market, theoretically they should be getting a percentage taken off in taxation.
Yeah, absolutely, really, really well said. Sorry. It's about Anne Whittaker. If I was going to put a demon in a wig, I'd choose a more convincing wig, and that made me laugh. Flow Snake says, sorry, Whittaker doesn't know the difference between communism and social democracy. Remind me, how long was she an MP? How long was she an MP? Quite a while, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's, I can't remember.
I think that was kind of a question I was going to ask you. You ran away a few times from me. But actually, I guess the question kind of is when you get right wingers say, "Oh, that's communism," and obviously, look, I mean, we're living under. I mean, it's barely even social democracy, right? But talking about tax increases is just a very social democratic policy. Is it that people at Anne Whittaker completely understand what communism and social democracy is, and they lie, or are they just really, really stupid and they genuinely believe that actually taxes equal communism? I know there's a lot of right-wingers out there who are thick as shit and think that. But someone like Anne Whittaker, right, she comes across as very silly and stupid, but like she is actually fairly intelligent. It pains me to say that.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. It could be a kind of thing where it's like they know the difference, but they kind of don't care because it's useful to them to tell themselves a narrative about like, oh well, these people all just want Stalinism, you know, and then you have to do very little thinking about the kind of society that you want because so much of right wing politics is just vibes. It's just like, how do I reinforce the hierarchy? How do I make sure that everything stays the same? How do I protect the in-group as much as possible? Like the right-wing instinct is to protect the in-group by keeping everything as similar as it is to how it currently is, or maybe a bit back in the past, back, you know, for the good old days. Like that is sort of the right-wing instinct. It's not always a bad instinct necessarily. You know, it can sometimes stumble itself into a good instinct. For example, like in environmental protections, like sometimes it can stumble itself into good instincts, but a lot of the time it stumbles itself into terrible instincts, like protecting oil industries.
I mean, I should probably check out that documentary then, because Autumn says no, she's thick as shit. So maybe I'll check that. Maybe she is actually really is stupid. But I think that that's divorced from the conversation between communism and social democracy, because most of the conversations I have with people, like, they probably grasp what social democracy is, but they certainly don't grasp what communism is. Wow. And Widdicombe come through. And I think that a lot of people don't grasp what communism is, because it's the same as when you got right-wingers push that conspiracy theory of cultural Marxism, right? And the idea behind cultural Marxism is, first of all, they think that Marxism is about equality. It's not necessarily true. And two, they think, well, cultural Marxism means the state is forcing social equality on people, right? That's what they think it is. And I think it's the same for economics, actually. And Widdicombe thinks that, you know, communist countries want to make people equally poor. And I think that's what a lot of people think that communism is. First of all, to understand communism, you have to understand Karl Marx. And by the way, Karl Marx, look, if you hear anyone that says Karl Marx is stupid, disregard their opinion, right? There are many... No, and the reason why I say this is not even a joke, right? The reason why I say this is because Karl Marx is highly regarded among many people. I would say all economists, despite the fact that many economists are on the right and disagree with Karl Marx. You won't get real economists saying, oh, he's an idiot. They'll just say, I disagree with Karl Marx. But Karl Marx is his life's work was mostly built on analysing the capitalist system, right? Critiquing capitalism, especially when people invoke, oh, we're going to have this Marxist country. What does that mean? What, a country full of people just saying, oh, capitalism is bad? You know, it's not a thing. Marxism isn't really an ideology. I'm a Marxist, but that's not an ideology. It's an analysis. And you can't understand communism without understanding capitalism. And I think that most people, I mean, I had this, even when I was speaking to Michelle Dewsbury on GB News, and I think it might be between the breaks. I can't remember whether it was during the break. And I was talking about wealth taxes. And she's like, yeah, but look, I don't agree with wealth taxes. I like capitalism. I like the idea of the free market. And I was like, well, you're conflating many things here. First of all, wealth taxes doesn't change the mode of production, right? You're still living under a capitalist system with wealth taxes. But two, capitalism isn't free markets. That's not the markets transcend political modes of production. So I think it's mainly people don't understand capitalism. Therefore, if you can't understand capitalism, you don't understand communism. I mean, listen to the IEA. They love their free markets, right? Rimi Ibrahim is like, well, look, I like capitalism because it's about freedom. And like, once again, you're conflating markets and capitalism. Markets have existed forever. Wait, it predates capitalism. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. You mentioned cultural Marxism there. Did you mention that it was a Nazi conspiracy theory? Because I always like to bring up that bit of trivia.
Yeah, so I mean, I said it's a conspiracy theory, but actually, isn't it like one of the oldest anti-Semitic tropes
Yeah, it is tied, but specifically the Nazis like use the term culture Bolshevismus, like it literally is a Nazi conspiracy theory, and inevitably like tied to anti-Semitism as well. Like the idea that the Soviet Union was entirely run by Jewish people is like a pretty old conspiracy theory. But yeah, primarily promoted by the Nazis. I just thought I'd mention it.
Well, that's actually some really interesting. You're so intelligent, Ben. I love it. So
my head is all scrambled at the moment. I can't.
You guys do so well.
I don't know if I'm even making sense.
No, you are. You're making so much sense. And then I just love any comments about landlords. Like, we also need more tax breaks for landlords. They're the real victims of today's society. And I just loved it. It was so
Yeah, I tell you what, I love. I mean, it was. I said on the show with Stephen, actually, we were talking about landlords. I said it's lucky Sarah isn't here because she'd be fucking throwing the camera. I love it when you get on. I love it when you get livid about landlords. I'm so here for it.
And then even like, because some of my it's such a shame. Some of my friends are landlords, and I'm like, you know what? You're lucky. You're really kind sometimes to me, but like, I hate that you're a landlord. Cog, what would you say is the value of 20 yards of linen? And keen to hear your thoughts.
Oh, that's a good one.
So,
how many jackets can you get?
Beginning with chapter 4 of the second volume of Das Kapital.
But you remember the chapter? Is that just a joke?
No, that was
I was going to say.
Mate, I actually was like, what is
because
going
actually,
on?
I think it's in the second chapter actually. So
yeah, it's a second chapter. Yeah. No,
and then
Jacqueline
said, I've heard that Elon Musk earns around $8,000 per minute, which is around $8 million a day. He could be taxed $7 million a day and he would still be mega rich. The fact of the matter is that Elon Musk could be taxed loads and still be fucking rich. That's the most aggravating part about his existence. And then just some criticisms about Starmer, which is on that story. Starmer's a coward, but not for the reasons that Huckabee is suggesting. I think you guys kind of alluded to that as well in your analysis. And then Noffel's in the chat. Hey, Noffel, so good to see you. That's funny considering Zionist organizations in Israel had the Havara agreement with the Nazis, breaking the boycott of 1933.
True.
Which is true.
Oh,
I know that
I felt like he was about to say something, wasn't he? He's about to go, oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so Anne Widdecombe did him last time. Who did him this time?
Oh, God. I don't know.
Have we got, I wonder if we've got, like, we've got someone from within, you know? which one of you is undermining us? You were about to say something. I know it. Go on.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's always something that's that's good to bring up, because, but not for the reasons of like, oh, the Nazis and the Zionists were like aligned, because they weren't aligned. But neither were the Nazis and the Palestinians, despite the fact that the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was like he had his own battalion of the SS. That's a whole story. But it's not that the Palestinians and the Nazis were aligned, and it's not that the Zionists and the Nazis were aligned. Basically, the Nazis hated both the Zionists and the Palestinians, the same way that they hated both America and the Soviets. Like, you know, it wasn't like a competition. They were just like opposite enemies for them to oppose, and they would deal with each one accordingly. You know, they had the Nazi-Soviet pact. That didn't mean they didn't hate the Soviets. So always worth bringing up. But it's worth bringing up in a way of being like, and I think Noffel is doing this, by the way. I'm just sort of adding extra context, of being like, it's not as simple as, oh, these two are like opposite ends of a spectrum. And in order to oppose anti-Semitism, you have to be pro-Zionist. That's not how it works.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Really great point. And sorry, and this was on Starmer would have I actually really enjoyed this conversation between the two of you, but Starmer would have stood up to Hitler, but only if the focus groups told him it would help him in the polls. And then someone else said it would entirely depend on what Morgan McSweeney told him to do.
True.
And then
That's
Jim
true.
said the same thing. It's actually a near piece of McSweeney threatening her, but that was also about McSweeney, about the final story. But that did make me laugh. But this is interesting, and maybe Cog, you can respond to this. Cog's not actually joking that much. Churchill supported Mussolini and Franco up until 1938 and only opposed Hitler because they wanted the British Empire.
Yeah, no, that's as far as I know. That sounds.
Yeah, I
right.
mean, I do want to make it clear that oftentimes it's not done in he's gone again in altruistic ways, right? Like not saying that we won World War II because it was just about fighting fascism, right? It's at the end of the day, when it comes to geopolitical movements and realignments, it's always down to how much can you benefit your own state. It is ultimately down to imperialism. So the nuance I'm adding to my own point is that, you know, it wasn't like Churchill was like some altruistic person who wanted to fight the Nazis because it was wrong, because it's very hard to say that when at the same time is also happy for Indians to be genocided, right? He supported that. It is always at the behest of the selfish state. That's what it ultimately boils down to, which is actually the bit of history that the right wing absolutely does not want to be taught. You know, and they don't like these moral grayness, actually. In fact, if you don't say that Churchill was some hero, you're branded as a disgusting, despicable scumbag. Whereas actually it's important to understand the nuance of, yes, Churchill was our leader who won the war, but he wasn't a good person, especially when you look at the Irish and the Indians and his opinions on them.
Absolutely. I think just final one, doesn't intent count towards classifying an act as terrorism?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Are we talking legally or because it depends if we're talking legally or in terms of IR, just in terms of the IR definition?
Well, yeah, because obviously if you were intended to bomb a square full of civilians, right, and you got caught, you'd be branded as a terrorist, right? I wonder if Dominic is saying if there's anything within, I mean, Palestine Action doesn't have a charter, but if they had a charter, is there anything they can look within that to prescribe them before they actually do any acts? I mean, it's probably worth you commenting again if you haven't already left, because I kind of want a bit of clarification on what you mean by that.
I think whilst they comment... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Colin, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, according to like the IR thing, that was sort of what I meant by with the intent to like influence government policy, government outcomes. Like the definition is like you do some violence towards civilians, and that violence, you a non-state actor does some violence towards civilians with the intent of influencing a political outcome. So it would fit with the IR definition, but I don't know if you're talking about like the legal, like the definition of British law, which is slightly different.
Yeah. And I think just final ones, because some super chats came through. Chucky, £2. Good show, Fash. Are back in Bristol on 24th. And then Rachel, if I made a reference to PCU, would anyone get it? What's PCU?
I mean, thank you for the $2, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by the PCU. UK medical drama, no bankruptcy. Okay, is this a medical joke?
I don't know, but Rachel, you know we absolutely love you, but thanks. Like, I don't understand what's going on, but I'm here for it.
No, the no bankruptcy plot device is basically like in a lot of medical dramas. Obviously, the thing is that people are there's the added layer in US medical dramas that somebody might be going into massive debt by.
I see. I don't watch
Breaking Bad. If Breaking Bad was set in the UK.
Yeah,
it'd be like,
one episode.
I'm getting healthcare. I'm getting cancer treatment.
Oh yeah,
great.
Oh yeah.
As someone who doesn't watch medical dramas in America, I'm not. I hate medical dramas. To be fair, do they try and glaze over that and not talk about medical bankruptcy, or do they actually talk about a lot? I mean,
I just remember all the romances from Grey's Anatomy, not so much the struggles of like needing to access help.
Okay. Well, sponsored by Palantir.
Yeah. Yeah,
apparently
but
Choki had someone said, don't forget to read out Choki's comments
about a good show.
I don't know, super chat apparently.
Yeah, I put that out.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Back in Bristol on 24th. If you can oppose them, do.
Yes, absolutely. But that's it for the comments. Well done, great show, guys. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. Apologies for me not being fully up with it. My brain feels a bit scattered. And I think when you're kind of ill and you spend a lot of time in bed, your brain is scattered. Also, apologies about the slight tech issues, but I think that's a psyops if you ask me. Someone on the outside doing it. Oh, we know it's Anne Widdicombe. She's there. She's there on her little phone. We need to do a Discord shout out. Yes. Someone actually had the link because I think someone's created a Discord for us, and thank you so much. It was Jim, because I don't know anything about Discord. and I felt like we needed to kick up the arse.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
So I don't know if you're able to find the comment. It might be quite difficult to do that because I think someone actually put the link there, and then we need to get our asses on the Discord.
True. I do like that your impression of Anne Widdecombe included the boomer finger, the like like a calculator. Like the
Migrants.
That's
Okay, I don't know if we'll get the Discord out there somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing with Discord. I am kind of like, Graham said we still haven't claimed the subreddit I made you either. I'm so sorry. Like I'm actually kind of a boomer when it comes to a lot of tech. We need to start doing this stuff. Anyway, before we ramble on, I want to thank everyone who tuned in. Of course, thank you to Ben for your incredible insights. But that's of course all we have time for. Remember to please like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. We will see you on Friday, and hopefully after that, when you next see me, I'll be all better. But that is all for me. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.